Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Good morning and or good afternoon, as the case might be. And welcome back to the next episode of our Conversations with Tech Leaders Shaping the Future of Canada. My name is Dalibor Petrovic. I am a partner at Deloitte and host of this series. I would like to start by, first of all, thanking the CIO Strategy Council, who have been graciously co-sponsoring and co-promoting this series together with Deloitte. We've now been doing this program for about a year and a half and have had a chance to welcome and talk with truly top-tier leaders of Canadian technology industry. Today is absolutely no exception to that. I'm extremely excited about our guest today. Before I introduce Rex and pass the mic over to him, just a friendly reminder that this session is 45 minutes long, that we are going to reserve some time for your questions. So please do submit questions to Rex using Q&A function of our Zoom platform. With that, I'm looking at the time. We are about 2 minutes in and approaching a 3-digit number of participants joining. I'm going to start the show. It's a delight and pleasure to welcome this morning Rex Lee. Rex is the CIO of one of Canada's truly iconic organizations, Canadian Tire. It's of course a iconic Canadian retail business, and we all know the amount of disruption and opportunities that technology presents to retailers. I'm extremely excited to hear from Rex, on things that he's working on. So Rex, thank you very much for your time. Welcome to our program. I often start by asking my guests to tell us their story, how you navigated your life, how you navigated your career to now be at the helm of technology at Canadian Tire.
Great. Thank you, Dalibor, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this series. I've listened to some of these other speakers, and it's been a phenomenal number of individuals, and it's great to see the talent we have across this country of ours. I'd love to tell you that I had some beautiful master plan that was extremely well executed, and that's how I became in the role I'm in. I would be, of course, completely lying if I told you that. The truth is, I struggled a lot in high school, and I really had no clue what I wanted to do. I wasted a lot of time playing video games, but through that passion, I started to get interested in understanding how these video games are actually built, and I started to teach myself how to code. Although back in those days, it wasn't as sexy as coding is today. We called it programming, and I started with basic beginner's all-purpose symbolic instruction code, and taught myself assembler, and got into some of the coding stuff, and just did it as for fun. Very much a real geek in sort of playing with technology. It didn't help me with my studies at school very much, but it was something I was quite passionate about. I even built almost like a software as a service, although there was no cloud back then, capability for a restaurant that I was working at. And I built a time tracking system for them where they would give me a bunch of data, and then I built the program, and I would input that data, and it would schedule people, and I would send it back to them. And I probably didn't make a lot of money, but at the time I thought it was a lot of money. It was a nice side hustle. Again, side hustles weren't a thing back then either.
So a true pioneer in every sense.
Hey, it was just fun stuff to do, and I had no real aspirations. And I went into university, and I went to the University of Western Ontario, and I took a BA, or got a BA in administrative and commercial studies. And it was fascinating for me. I got to learn a lot about organizational behavior and leadership and information and management, and lots of the various theories. And funny enough, I still apply a lot of what I've learned, although at the time I thought, well, this is not going to lead into anything. And I graduated from university still not really knowing what I wanted to do. So like many other people, I said, I might as well just go back to school. And I did. And so I did my my MBA at Schulich, not Schulich, at McMaster, De Groot. When I did my MBA, I thought, okay, well, I'll probably get into marketing. It sort of was something that sort of attracted me, but I still just did this technology thing. And it was always kind of this thing. And then when I graduated, I went through a whole bunch of interviews, and the interviews that I got tended to be more technology flavored roles. And even though I was kind of applying to sort of more marketing kind of roles, because that's where I thought I wanted to go. And I landed my first job at Belle Canada in IT. And I remember going, well, maybe the universe is trying to tell me something here. Maybe this tech thing is more than just a hobby. And I still recall the interviewer asking me, how long do you plan on staying with Belle Canada? And I honestly said, maybe 2 years. And I thought, yeah, 2 years is about enough time for me to understand everything about Belle Canada and, move on to my next job. I stayed there for 11 years.
Wow.
And I had such great opportunity to learn from so many different leaders and technologies. And Belle is so big that I could move around and do so many different things. And in my time at Belle, I also broke a lot of rules. And some of those broken rules helped me in terms of my career and where I eventually landed. I remember when I first started being the new guy, they put me in an aisle where all the old PCs went to die. So it was a big, junk collection of old PCs. And just working late, I thought it would be fun to disassemble those PCs and build a server, which I did. And I actually hooked it up into the network, all of which I was not supposed to do. And I got noticed, both good and bad. But I created a way for the IT departments to actually share information and files that they weren't able to do easily. At that time, email wasn't even dominant yet, and they had various forms of communication. And so it did get me noticed. And so it allowed me to then progress from there and do a whole bunch of other things. And it was fabulous. The one other rule that we broke and I got in trouble with that actually helped propel my career, and funny enough, was this social collaboration technology that we built at Skunkworks. And it's an interesting story in that I was intrigued by this brand new television show called American Idol. And what intrigued me wasn't so much the entertainment and the music and the singing, all that, that was interesting. What really intrigued me was the business model, because the way I thought about it was, here's a bunch of people looking to sell a product, wanting to maximize their return on commercializing a product. The product just happens to be a singer in this situation. And so what product do you sell? Well, if you ask people what they want to buy, maybe you sell them what they've told you. And sure enough, that's exactly what the model was. And so I thought it was fascinating how people would pay to select their favorite singer. And then at the end of it, they would commercialize that singer and sell it back to people, and they would pay even more to buy their albums and go to their, and I thought, wow, this is brilliant. And I started to think a little bit about, could you apply that logic to ideas in a corporate setting? Could you open it up to the masses and say, hey, there's lots of these ideas. Which one of these ideas are the best? And based on what people said, could you then implement it and get the greatest value in return on that? And I shared that with my CIO at Belle Canada at the time. And he thought, wow, this is a really cool idea. Let's go do something. And he gave me some money, and we did some skunk works. And for the first while, things were great. Lots of great ideas. People were participating and doing all this good stuff. And then something bad happened. Well, there was a change in policy at Bell Canada in regards to, compensation, and we'll get into the details of it, but it did have a bit of a backlash. And because we created a forum that was open to everybody, it was used as a way for people to tell management what they thought of the changes. And it became, we created our own denial of service. Again, didn't even know what denial of service was back then. But we created our own problems. We actually, things got shut down because just the volume of activity that would happen on the server. And because this was never really sanctioned, it was all skunk works. I got hauled in front of the CEO with other executives to say, well, who authorized this, who allowed this to happen, and all those kind of things. And I thought for sure I was going to get fired. Funny enough, not the first time I thought I was going to get fired, but I thought I was going to get fired. But the CIO at the time, Eugene Roman, he actually, and I'll never forget this, he actually stood up to the entire executive team there. And it was pretty, big boardroom, and, and said, if you want to fire somebody, fire me. And he did that, gave me air cover on
Wow.
what we were doing, because and I was just blown away that somebody would do that, and he did. That then progressed into a whole bunch of sanctioned things that we actually built at Canadian Tire, and became quite powerful. And it was something that we actually started to sell to other customers. And one of those customers happened to be RIM, Research in Motion, and BlackBerry. And I remember they would bring me out there to sort of talk about the stuff that you're doing with social computing and how does this work. And so I would sit there and I'd tell them what we would do. And then I got a phone call after one of the presentations by someone there, and they said, "Hey, I actually read about this stuff. It was published in a book, and they had read through it and said, we just want you to build all of that stuff here. Could you just do that?" And what was fascinating about RIM in those days was it was completely unconstrained. There was, what they promised was whatever money you need, whoever you want to hire, anywhere from around the world, build it from scratch, ground up. And how many opportunities do you get, when someone says that to you? Right? Very few. Even such, I debated for a long time because I really liked being at Bell, and I could get stuff done, and it was fantastic people, and I was afraid. Looking back, it was an obvious good move to make, but at the time it wasn't obvious. My time at BlackBerry was fantastic. Loved it. I still love my BlackBerries. I still miss the physical keyboard. And I didn't have any interest in leaving until I got the call from that same CIO that gave me air cover. And he had moved on to Canadian Tire. And he called me and said, "Hey, listen, I have to do a whole bunch of stuff, and I need some help. Are you interested?" And retail? No, I don't know. And then he explained to me what they needed to do, the technology transformation that was required. And it sounded a little more interesting. He was pretty convincing. And so I picked up a role at Canadian Tire, starting off with digital transformation and building out an e-commerce capability, and then progressed to do a variety of different things, and eventually led me to the position that I'm now, getting the opportunity to lead a fantastic team, unbelievable organization, and just fabulous people, and doing some amazing things. And so a lot of luck, a lot of circumstances, a lot of breaking rules and getting in trouble, and somehow navigating through that, and a lot of people that have helped bring me through. And it's kind of how I landed to the role I'm in.
What a fantastic story. You say luck. Yeah, well, I think luck happens to follow people who have, who have courage to make bold moves. You are clearly the epitome of a pioneer and innovator. This is really cool. Very, very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us, Rex. So now, of course, at Canadian Tire, you are leading the technology and digital portfolio. Are you able to share with us sort of what are the cool things that you're working on, but also what are those challenges you're facing, and what are the obstacles in front that you see?
Yeah, it's I mean, it's a big question. I was doing an interview recently, and at the end of the interviews, I often ask people, do they have any questions for me? And this person said to me, their question was, I'd like to understand why you're at Canadian Tire.
Mm.
Oh, that was a good question. And I explained to them, we have a big investor day coming up tomorrow where we're going to share our strategy. It's pretty exciting. So I won't steal its thunder. But I will say that at the core of it is this idea about we are here to make life in Canada better. And I believe we can say that with authenticity because we're truly a Canadian organization. And that's how this company grew up. Like it was never a formulaic company of, you just sell this, do this. The history of Canadian Tire is fascinating in that it's always been purposeful around the customer, about Canadians. And the eclectic assortment of products that we have is a testament to being very, very much customer focused. It was, I often say, the original everything store in that we're not constrained by, product. As long as we focus on customer and whatever the customer needs, whatever Canadians need, and their needs continue to change and it's different coast to coast, we'll be successful. And we have been. And so there's not too many Canadian retail organizations, actually Canadian organizations as a whole, which are fully Canadian. And I don't have to convince head office that Canada is a little bit different than what the corporate strategy is and how we need to focus on this and focus, because that is us. And so having that opportunity is pretty exciting, and it allows us to differentiate. We're celebrating our 100th anniversary. The store in my background here is the first Toronto store that we had. And to survive 100 years requires a lot of things. Requires that focus and it requires your ability to be innovative and to adapt. And so in terms of what we're doing and where we're going to survive for the next 100 years, there's a ton of work that we need to do to think about the competitive landscape.
Yep.
And the evolving needs and demands of customers and the disruption that is constantly happening across the organization. And so there are core things that we'll focus on about how do we make life in Canada better, how do we provide the services, how do we ensure that the technology is there for those things. And then in sort of core technology, there's a big modernization effort that we're doing as well. And I break it down into four segments, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And although there's a logical sequence to these segments, they're all running in parallel. And there's a lot of iteration that happens. The first one is this idea of how do you scale your processes for longer term visions and objectives and standardize across the enterprise so that you can reuse quickly. And sometimes people, when they talk about agile, think of it as a free form, do whatever you want kind of, which it is not. But if you can harness standard enterprise processes with the thinking of long-term, 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, what do you need to do? You can actually go a lot faster with upfront investment. And so that work across the many banners that we have and the breadth of what we do is a big component of what needs to happen at Canadian Tire. The second component would talk to architecture, technology, but architecture and how you think about these things for scale. One of the challenges that we've had in the past at Canadian Tire, and I've seen this elsewhere as well, is too much focus on projects, one-off initiatives, things that people need to get done. And when you focus on projects, you're not necessarily stitching together all those projects with a long-term view of what needs to get done. And so you make decisions that compromise on long-term value. For example, we've all been taught about scope, time, budget, quality, the triple constraints, PMBOK, and all those kind of good things. The problem with just focusing on that is that you can deliver all those things and still deliver no value to the customer.
Correct.
And, part of what's happened over time is it creates an us versus them mentality between your business partners and technology. And you get this sort of ridiculous spin on, we got no business value, and the technology guys say, not my fault. I delivered what you asked for. And the business folks are like, why didn't you tell us that this wasn't going to deliver it? And it just goes in circles, and it's not going to lead to long-term success. So when you think of architecture and you're thinking scale and security and stability, resiliency and supportability, and all these sort of core architectural principles, and you have a roadmap and you're thinking 5, 10, 15, 20 years out, it changes your decisions. And so that becomes core. So the obvious ones that people are looking at are enterprise services and APIs, and cloud capabilities, elastic computing, these kind of things. And then there's core platforms, and sort of being able to figure out which are those things that you are going to differentiate yourself on as a corporation, and which are the things that are commodity capabilities that you don't really need to differentiate yourself on, and have some really hard discussion. Because if you just look at them as one-offs, everybody wants to be the best at everything, but you don't necessarily, as a corporation, need to be the best at everything. You need to be the best at a few things, and you need to buck the trend on some. Otherwise, you just become like everybody else. So architecture is a big component. The third component would be automate the heck out of everything. And so there's multiple reasons why you want to do that, and it's easier said than done. And so a lot of the automation, whether it's RPA or intelligent automation, or workflow, or business process automation, people don't know that it can be automated. And so there's the opportunity to be disruptive and automate. And if you do those things, so you figure out your processes, you think about your architecture, and you then automate everything, you can completely change your operating model, how people work. And so the opportunity for individuals is that they can now do way more than they ever could with fewer people, because of good architecture, strong processes, and automation. And that allows you to go faster and obviously be more competitive in that, and tailor towards that focus on customer, and how do we make sure that we're always focused on customer. So it's sort of a high level flyby over a sort of that 4-pronged strategy of what we're looking at Canadian Tire. And it supports a longer term vision. I remember, Dalibor, I was asked once by an executive, what's our roadmap on technology? And I remember saying, you mean, what's our business roadmap? Because just having a technology roadmap without sort of linking it to a business strategy is not usually a recipe for success. And so now that we've got a pretty solid 5-year and 10-year kind of view towards where we're going, it allows us to think about technology holistically outside of individual projects, but thinking to a greater, more important objective for the organization. So that would be, how I would classify the strategy. I tied in there some of the challenges. We're 100 years old. We have a little bit of technical debt, and that technical debt is hard to pay off. I sometimes talk about technical debt like financial debt. It's not necessarily a bad thing until you can't make the payments, or you stop making the payments, and then it becomes really problematic.
That's a very good way to think about it. Actually, that's very good way to think about it.
Yeah, I think it's helpful. And so we have some debt. It's not going to be all paid off. but we need to understand, what are the payments that have to be done.
Mm. I love what you said about this focus on projects and the fact that the project can be delivered on time, on scope, on budget,
Yeah.
and still be viewed as failure because there is no
Yeah.
value conversation. So
Yeah.
like we are very much in those conversations these days with our clients as well. Like it's not about what we deliver, it's about what value is ultimately generated from that is delivered. So that's actually very good.
Absolutely.
So Rex, obviously you just told us your story, and it's a rich and progressive career where actually you managed to convert your passion and interest from childhood into a very successful career. Obviously you've interacted and worked with many technology leaders across some of other iconic Canadian organizations, Belle and Research in Motion. When you think about the role of a technology leader, CIO today, how would you comment the changes and progressions you may have observed over the last couple of decades, I would assume? And where do you think this role is heading? Like, what are those things that you think CIOs will need to be focused on going forward?
It's such a great question, and we could talk about this for the entire rest of this session. There's maybe a few things that come top of mind for me. I guess first off is that Canada is amazing because of its diversity and inclusion. We're not perfect, but it affords us a uniqueness on a global stage. And I think as CIOs and technology executives and leaders that we should be doing more to harness that inclusion and that diversity. And so yesterday, as you know, was International Women's Day. And there is an opportunity to be much more inclusive, I'll say that, within Canadian Tire and in tech, and more broadly speaking as well. People talk a lot about thinking outside the box, right? Now, have you ever thought about what that box is? That box is everything that you've ever learned, all of that training, all your assumptions, all your biases. So how do you think outside of everything that you know? Well, the way you do that is through inclusion and diversity. And so, I think our leaders of tomorrow, those that get that, are going to be able to break through and do creative things that we've never been able to do before. And those that don't get that are going to be doing the same things that everybody else is doing. I have this definition of collaboration, because people often talk about collaboration and they often confuse it for communication, or they confuse it for consensus. The way I describe collaboration is that it is the achievement of results impossible to accomplish individually. And so it differentiates from communication, where it's just sharing of information. If we don't do something different because people have gotten together, it's not really collaboration. You might be communicating a bunch of stuff. But if you can do something that we couldn't do by ourselves, that to me is true collaboration. And if all you do is surround yourself with people who are exactly the same as you, your likelihood to break through and do something awesome is hugely diminished. So, I think that comes to mind, and it's important. It's something that we're aggressively doing at Canadian Tire as well, looking to be much more inclusive, from a BIPOC, from a gender perspective, and what else can we do? Because we know that strengthens us and it represents Canada. And like I said before, we're here to make life in Canada better. I think another trend that I see, and it's an interesting one, is I see a lot of technical leadership being brought over from other countries, and I question some of that and the purpose and the need for that. I do think there's huge value in understanding what's happening around the globe and ideas, and how retail is done in Asia, let's say, is very different than what retail looks like in North America, and we should absolutely be learning and doing that. Doesn't mean that you need to hire from other countries just to be able to take advantage of that. I don't think so. And so I have seen that trend happen, where a lot of technical leaders are being brought in from other countries, and to try to change how we do things. what you don't want to do, in my opinion, is lose what makes you different and to play your own game. And because I've seen that happen with great companies where you've seen a influx of other countries sort of coming in and saying, well, this is the way to do it. And we lost a little bit of what makes us unique and differentiates us. And so, I see that trend, and I'd like to think that we've got great talent. I've met so many smart people across our own country. Maybe two other points: business acumen, understanding things again from a customer focus, from a business focus, in terms of, so it's not just all about technology, is absolutely critical, right? The ability to deliver something is not really relevant if it adds no value. And so you can get easily down this technical path, but you need to balance that so you don't, the pendulum doesn't swing too far over where it's just business people who have no technology understanding. It's not about the technology, that double negative. You still need people who get it. They don't have to be experts in everything, but you need to be able to challenge what people are saying and how you think about things. And you just can't outsource all of that. And I've seen it seems to be shifting back towards technology leaders that actually have technical backgrounds or a technical aptitude on things. But for a period of time, it was trending towards, you didn't have to be a technologist. All you had to do is, great vendor management. And I think people have learned, especially during the pandemic, that if you don't have that depth internally and that technical acumen, you are at the whim of others, and you're leaving a lot up to somebody else to dictate your future. And the ability to question why and how and what's in the best interest of the organization, you don't necessarily want to outsource that. So it's not about the technology, but you also have that business acumen as well.
I love that statement, that it is not about technology. Actually, it's a very punchy way to describe it. Very, very punchy way to describe it. And in these interviews that I've done, probably 25 of them so far, I have had people who come from various different backgrounds, ending at the CIO level. So, and I think everybody so far has suggested that this business acumen is critical. And the advice was, in your career, if you're presented with the opportunity to go from IT into the business area, take it. Take it. You will be exposed to something new. You'll be better off for it. You'll be stronger as a technology leader. So I think that probably is one of the lessons I've taken is, don't be just laser focused on progressing within IT. Take opportunity to go and circle the wagons around the organization. That strengthens the perspective. You mentioned something important about the strength of our Canadian IT talent. I would be curious to get your thoughts on what could we as a community of accomplished technology executives, what could we be doing better or different to nourish that talent, to interject early, to actually create the pool of people that will be diverse as the next wave of talent? Like, any thoughts on that?
A lot of thoughts on that, and I'll share with you some of what we're doing at Canadian Tire, even though some of our competitors might now listen to this and say, oh yeah, we should do that too. But I'm going to share it anyways, because I think it strengthens all Canadians. So right now, technology is a hot market. And within technology, there are some really, really hot areas. So cybersecurity, data, cloud engineering, these kind of skills. And if it's just about money and just comp, that's one thing. But I think there's an opportunity for us to do something a little bit different. And that is that realization that people are people. They're not machines. And we need to think of people and their careers. They're not, something to be implemented and decommissioned like a, piece of technology per se. And if you think about the individual as an individual, then we as corporations and organizations that are investing in technology talent have an opportunity to build careers and to build long-term capability, as opposed to just filling in roles. And it's easier said than done. But if we do this, then we strengthen the depth of the expertise and complement what we're doing through academia into a lifelong journey of learning and continuously progressing in careers. I've been in large organizations, and I've seen where individuals are, maybe very knowledgeable in a certain function, but they stagnate. And those functions no longer become relevant over time because of something disruptive has happened.
Yep.
And unfortunately, that individual is stuck with a skill set that's not transferable easily. And they're now having to play catch up on things. And so if we shift that a bit and we think about the individuals and how do we invest, it strengthens all of us and strengthens the individuals, and it differentiates your company as well. And it's definitely something that I'm pushing very aggressively here at Canadian Tire to ensure that people who want to come to Canadian Tire, I want to invest in you as a person, in your own personal brand, even if that makes you more marketable to our competitors, with the belief that by doing this and seeing a company that values you as an individual, that maybe you'll want to stay because you've got a career right now, you've got a role right now, but what about the next role and the role after that role as well? And I'd like to prepare you for that too. And so it's something I believe we can do and we should do. And if others do this as well, I think we'll strengthen technology and what it can mean to our organizations and more broadly speaking as well.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the objective of Canadian Tire is to make the life of Canadians better.
Yeah.
What you're doing is making the lives of those you touch and interact with better, helping them, strengthening them. And you're right. If everybody was to do the same, the whole industry would rise, right?
I would agree.
All be better off.
Yeah.
This is wonderful. Excellent. We often have audience members who are students listening in, who are contemplating a career in technology. Any advice for them?
Yeah, sure. The first thing I would say is don't worry if you don't have a master plan. Very few people that I know, my peers and other CIOs and CTOs, had some beautiful master plan that they just executed well. Although it feels like it. I mean, I've got two younger daughters, one's in university, one's in high school, but the pressure on people to just have your whole life figured out is crazy. And the ability to stay unfocused is an ability. It's kind of odd to hear that, but if you think about how if you're driving, you're in a rush and you're trying to get from point A to point B, what you pay attention to is different than if you're a passenger and you're looking around and what you observe and what you notice. And sometimes the opportunities come because you've not been focused. But if you're so focused, you miss the opportunities. And I know throughout my career, there was risks that were taken. There were people that pulled me. There are things that, I had no idea were going to land into something else. And so not having a master plan, being able to not focus too much can actually be hugely advantageous to you. And it gives you the opportunity to see things that others may not see. I would also advise you, and this was an interesting one that I remember learning, was that throughout your career, people will give you advice. They'll do performance reviews and they'll tell you, these are the things you're good at, these are the things you're not good at, and these are the things you need to improve. And they'll tell you things like that. Listen, but take it with a grain of salt. And just because you're not strong in something doesn't necessarily mean you need to fix that. I find people have been more successful when they've doubled down on their strengths. So things that you're really good at, saying, I'll be even better at that. And that makes you stand out. Because if all you do is fix the things that people tell you to fix, you become like everybody else. You become average. Yeah. You want to stand out, then collaborate those areas that you're not great at. Find people who are, and what you are great at, become exceptional. and it takes even more work. And don't rest on your laurels, but that makes you stand out. And so I would caution people on that. And I would also say, don't be mindful. I got to be careful here of how I say this, but be mindful of just blindly following rules and best practices. The definition of best practice is it's what everybody does. And so if you want to be like everybody else, then go follow best practices all day long. If you want to be exceptional, you want your company to be exceptional, then you are going to have to break rules. You have to do things that are not best practice because they have yet to be discovered, and you're going to be the one that's going to discover them. And so if you follow blindly, this is the way to do things, go from A to B, you'll never be able to sort of break out of that. And so question.
Spoken like a true pioneer. We have received a number of questions from the audience.
Sure.
Maybe some that we can touch. Digital transformation, of course, is a buzzword these days. What does digital transformation mean to you, and what does it actually mean in the context of Canadian Tire?
So when I think of digital transformation, the way I've explained it in the past is it is the pragmatic application of technology to enhance the customer experience. It's very broad, and there's some key words in there. The focus on customer, so it's not technology for the sake of technology, and pragmatic application. And so, understanding how is this useful versus just a nice to do kind of neat thing. Within technology, I have so many solutions looking for problems, tons of them. But there's no problem, but it sounds really neat, sounds really interesting. And so people want to chase after shiny things. And so being pragmatic, understanding deeply, what's at the core to the customer is really important. I go back to the history of Canadian Tire and the Billis brothers. And so you think, okay, tires. Well, who buys tires? People who have cars. Okay, what do people with cars do? They drive places. And so they would give, back in the 20s, maps. So pre-GPS and all the fun stuff we have these days. But they would give them maps with their tires. And it just made so much sense because they were focused on the customer and what they were doing, as opposed to, well, I sell tires and I sell this and very product focused. And so that digital transformation, when you think of the application of the technology in pragmatic ways, you can make things better. And so I do believe that anything that can be digital will be. And it affords you new opportunities, and it also creates disruption. And it's another great discussion we could have as well as, is IT dead? And what does IT look like in the future? But that's kind of how I think of digital disruption.
That's very good. That's very good. So it's really about a customer. It's about being pragmatic. It's not being distracted by shiny objects, but really understanding the core of the issue, and then mapping it to make the experience better for the clients. Lovely. Maybe one more question, because we are getting to our time. Anything that, like, we are all experiencing the talent challenges, the war for talent. Anything that you can share on, like, how are you thinking about that? What are the moves you might be making to ensure that you actually have access to the right talent at the right time?
Yeah. Going to where the talent is, as opposed to assuming that people will come to you. So, things like the post and pray methods, where, just because I put a job posting up doesn't actually mean that the right folks are going to see that posting, and investing prior to the need, so developing the rapport and relationships. This could be with institutions, it could be through academics, it could be through various forums, communities, industry, organizations. And doing that before you have the role is important, and because you want to establish that relationship and start to understand. I've hired lots of smart people without even having a job understood, because they were just smart people. and that, when you hire smart people, they figure out the job and where they add value and they can help. And so, being out there and making sure that you build the relationships, broadly speaking, you take that at an enterprise level. So it's not just me personally, allows you to think differently and creating a bit of a value proposition. And so if there are folks listening to this that are interested in working at Canadian Tire, things that I shared with you about how we are here to make life in Canada better, that all decisions are made by us. There is no, I don't have to go explain to somebody, why we're different, and we have that control, and that we are going to focus on you as an individual. If that appeals to you, then, please, consider Canadian Tire, because I think we could do some great things together.
I love it. So it's about relationships and connections, and there was the plug for people
There
to join
was.
Canadian
There you
Tire.
go.
Love it. Excellent. So what a great way to wrap us up. Now we are at time, 1 minute actually over time. I want to be very respectful of your time, Rex. This was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your perspectives on these really important topics. And I have a pleasure to announce what we're going to be doing in April. I have two amazing speakers lined up for April. On the April 13th, I'll be joined by Jesse Adcock, who many of you would know as the Chief Technology Officer from City of Vancouver, who then moved and became the Chief Digital Officer at Finning. So she'll be joining us in April. And then on the 20th, a week after that, I have a pleasure to welcome Paul Wagner, who is a Chief Transformation Officer for Government of Canada. So we will continue, I think, very strongly in this series. You will soon receive the invitations to sign up. And Rex, again, thank you so much on behalf of all the audience members. It was a pleasure and delight to see you again.
Thank you very much. It was my pleasure.
All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.